what I wanted to find out here, this will be like part one, is how long this takes and if it makes any sense whatsoever. Um, I, Louis Sprague came onto the M&StL in the 30s as a receiver. The railroad was in bankruptcy, and he brought the railroad back to be profitable enough to end up being bought out by the terrible Northwestern. So what I'm going to do here is take a, people like to take deep dives. We're going to go into kiddie pool when we look at this. In the beginning, they had a reasonable standard numbering system, and paint schemes all matched. Everything was cool. And then along come the diesels. And it's not particularly to the M&StL, but there were other railroads that did this too. They needed a way to basically tell which is which. And on the M&StL, they put a D prefix for diesel. And then for some crazy reason, they decided to number them for the month and year of purchase. And to people I talked to that worked for the railroad, they never pronounced the D. This would have been the 139. And then along come the Alco road switchers. And this would be the builder's photo of the first one they got. It's number 244, built in February of 1944. And as you can see, it has up next to the front truck, there's a bell under there. And I've been told, I haven't looked this up, but I've been told that the tractive effort of these engines was supposed to be the same as their MacArthur's. We can't call them Mikados after World War II. And, well, this is during World War II. And so they thought they could replace them one for one, but that didn't work out. Years ago, Gene Green put out a book on M&StL called M&StL in Color or something like that, Morning Sun book. And we collaborated on coming up with a list of the paint schemes that they used on the basic units. And nobody knows why they did this. There's all kinds of rumors floating around, but the only thing that was standard on this was a light gray roof and black underframe. I thought it would be easier just to go by Gene's choice of schemes. This would be scheme number one, first engine that came. And then if you look down here, there were two more locomotives that came. And they came 2 years later. And they came together and they were painted in this paint scheme. Here's a photo of one in color. If you've ever been to Boone, Iowa, they supposedly painted an engine in this paint scheme, but the blue's not the same. Next is scheme 2, which I panicked this morning because I didn't have a photograph of 744, but I did. I have an 8x10 glossy, and I was able to take a photo of it and put it in here. But as you can see, they bought one in 44, they bought another one in 47, and then in the end of 1949, all the rest of them, they finally standardized, and all the rest were the same paint. But these first two were different than the rest of them. If we look at 744, you see a yellow diamond on the end of the locomotive, and it's a fairly large diamond, I'll say. And then here is the second unit that came, and notice how much smaller the diamond is on the end. And then we get to that mass of locomotives that were all alike, and you see the diamond is even slightly larger. It actually goes over part of the radiator grill.
Where's the diamond?
Pardon?
Where is the diamond?
Okay, if you look at the end, that yellow, see how it goes up to a point at the top and then down to a point at the bottom?
gosh. Okay.
That's what I'm calling a diamond.
Okay. Okay. That's a crest. Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Now, scheme number 3. This one's easy. There's only one. This is a builder's photo, and it's interesting in that they use filters on the black and white in order to designate the colors instead of having it all be tones of gray. And this is Mr. Sprague in his new engine for a photo saying, I am the greatest. And everybody says, yes, you are. Number 3, or this is number 4. This again is a one of a kind. And it has just basically the opposite paint scheme of that first unit and the last units. It's yellow with a green diamond on the end. And here's a black and white of that one. Some of these I don't have colors of. I might, I'm going to think about this. They renumbered these things in 56, and I haven't looked at those to see. I may have this guy with a different number in a color photo, but I haven't checked yet. But one thing I want to point out here is I'm going to back up. If you look at the emblem, I'm going to go all the way back. Okay, if you look at this emblem on they call them medallions that are on the side of the cab. It's a black circle. The tilted box in the middle is half red, and then all the lettering and everything else is white. Same with that. If we look at this engine, there's no black. It's just half the tilted box is red, and the lettering is white. It shows up better in this photo. And this guy, you'll notice here, there's no black, there's no white. The only white is the circle around the tilted box. Half the tilted box is red. All the lettering is green. I had to have this decal custom made, but nobody makes anything like this. This is what I'm talking about. I slapped this stuff in here, and some of it's not going to flow as well as it probably should. But anyway, this is the standard medallion, black, red, and white. This is the medallion off the 944, which is basically white and red. And then this is the medallion off the 1044, which is basically white, red, and green. Okay, number 5. You can see we have 3 locomotives painted in this paint scheme. Now, something I should have mentioned is that first paint scheme, that blue one, the engines, all 3 were painted alike. Same with this one. All 3 are painted the same. But you'll notice one is bought in 45, January 45, and the other ones aren't bought till the fall of 46, and they're bought together. Makes no sense. Here's one of those guys. Basically green body, yellow stripe, gray roof, black underframe.
Clark, can you go back one?
Yep.
Okay. It says there. No, one more. Not that one. That one. Okay. The
I had one.
one with the numbers with the dates.
Come on, Clark.
Back more?
No, no, go forward, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
That one. Leave it alone. Scheme 5.
Now, one thing I didn't mention, I mentioned the bell down on the underframe. Well, they took those off, and then they added the class lights up there because these engines were going to go on the road, they thought, and they did. And they also, when they junked the steam engines, they kept the bells and put them on the steam engine, which causes modeler great grief. But fortunately, Loke Sound has fixed all that because you can select whatever bell you want. Okay, so now this guy here, there's what, five locomotives painted in this paint scheme. And in the original numbers, I don't have photos of all of them. But you can see there were two that were bought together. Well, actually three if I got my numbers out of whack here. There were actually three of them bought in 46, one in 45, and one in 48.
Are the
And
numbers
you'll
that
notice
start out
that,
with 200,
pardon?
are the numbers that start out with 200, are they the new numbers?
Those will be the new numbers.
Oh,
Forget about the 200s. That if you're a real M&StL man, in 56 the world's ends because that's when they changed everything. Um, this one here, maybe this particular engine, it's one of the few that I ever really remember seeing because we lived within a stone's throw of the tracks, and across the tracks from us was a ready mix. And they had a tight spur into that ready mix. And one day I'm walking out the front door and I hear the squealing of the flanges, and I look over and this engine is coming out of that spur, and I notice that the whole front end is practically gray, and that's one of the only recollections I have of these things. But also notice that they double-headed these with steam engines, and the diesels always lead because they don't want to get the grimy smoke all over them. All right, here's my birthday number. And you'll notice this guy, the stripes on the end are the same width all the way around. And the same with another one. This one, this is, notice the stripes come down lower than on the other one, but they're the same width. And then this guy is another one where the stripes kind of come to a point at the end. These are kind of fun to model because you have to take your stripe and then slice it to a point on the end before you put it on. All right, now we're down to where there's only two of these guys. And the striping is different on both. These guys are, so I've got a color photo here. Yep, orange engine with green trim. Now you'll notice this, you probably don't remember, but this green stripe on this is almost the same as that earlier engine, the 944, with the colors reversed, only it had a green body and red stripe. Really interesting. And then the one behind it we'll look at later. That's this one here, number 8. This was the classiest of all the paint schemes as far as intricate work. Two of them were bought the same year, then another one wasn't bought for a couple of years later. Here's a builder's photo of one, and you'll notice they still, in the builder's photo, the railroad put on the class lights and the bells, and along with the winter windows. There's more to this than that would be in part 2. And here's a color a photo of one of those in yellow and green. Last paint scheme. This guy here has got 3 colors. And again, 2 of them were built the same year and the other one a year or 2 later. This one here, I kept this photo in because it's had some damage to the frame, as you can see. And you can see they've also repainted that orange stripe on the frame. It's much newer and shinier than the rest of the locomotive. Okay, now management changes, sanity prevails, we'll say. In 1956, a guy named Schroeder took over, and he went down to the shops and he saw all the different paint schemes and all the weird numbers.
Yeah, hey, I'm on the Zoom for Thursday night. But anyway, what's happening?
Done? Anyway, so he was a graduate of Nebraska University, and he wanted something that was bright, colorful, that people could see at grade crossings, something for safety. So they picked the red and white colors of Nebraska. You know, you've all seen that big N on the Nebraska football stadium. That stands for knowledge. Anyway, this scheme here, you can see there it has a white stripe around it, with the cab is all red. This stripe, this paint scheme, the stripe goes around the cab also with a number. Even when they were trying to be standard, they couldn't do it. And this guy has a stripe going all the way around. Plus, not only is the roof black, but also the long hood and the short hood are black also. And this one here, I'm not 100% sure of this phase, if that roof is black or just sooty. But we'll say that some of them had a black cab roof. And that is it. How long did that take?
17 minutes.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
Very good.
I can fix it and talk a little longer.
Absolutely.
I can add the 200 numbers in here with the ones that I don't have.
Yeah.
And that photo there, that's my dad in the engine.
Oh, nice. Very good.
Okay, so I'm done. That's
all right.
Have you painted all of those
cool.
paint schemes?
Yep.
Yeah, you got to show the models.
Many times.
Wow.
Well, when I get to part 2, where I show you how I make these things, what you have to do to them, then we'll go through the models.
Yeah, the models, the whole
done.
collection was at Naperville. It was a nice display.
Okay, I'm finished.
All right, thank you, Clark. Very nice. Dave, you want to present?
Well, we always know what a disaster this can be, so I'll give it the old college try.
That's okay. I always cut out the part that that you want to cut out. So
I don't know if I'm sharing a single image now or.
no, we're seeing the folder right now.
Oh dear. Same problem.
Do you have PowerPoint on your computer?
This is not PowerPoint.
I know, but if you had PowerPoint, it would solve all these issues.
There we go.
That's looking good.
All right. So this is really brief. The other day, Ron showed, the freight car of the day, and I sent an email response saying it looked like a baled scrap load. Yep. So we're going to be looking at a few pictures of baled scrap loads. This is not a baled scrap load. This is the more traditional, pig's breakfast of post-consumer scrap with probably all different kinds of metals, different types of steel, no uniformity to it, and it's going to be up to some recipient to sort it all out. But baled loads tend, in most cases, not to be post-consumer, although scrapped automobiles sometimes are baled loads, but they tend to be from the scrapped from the original factory, so it's all the same metal. And in some cases, as you can see in the second car, I hope I've progressed to a second image here.
Yes,
it looks all jumbled. That the car that's more distant to the photographer looks all jumbled, while the main subject of the car, the CNW gondola, is rather neatly stacked. That's another feature of these baled loads as an open load. Baled loads are not as recent an innovation as you might think. My grandfather, who died about a decade before I was born, in the 1920s, 30s, worked for a company in Milwaukee called Gallant Henning. And among the things that they made were devices that could compact and bale a load. And I had an old picture of my grandfather, who again I never met, fishing And when I took the picture out of its frame, I discovered that behind it was a picture he obviously had found at work of a baled load as kind of an advertising picture. So to the right, we see their Acme hydraulic subsidiary. That's 100 pounds of assorted steel. And then to its left is one reduction, and then at the far left is the final reduction. But it would be, all three of these would be 100 pounds worth.
Nice.
I would estimate this picture probably maybe late 20s, 1930. I had the opportunity to tour a small metal fabricating shop near La Crosse, Wisconsin, as part of an NMRA regional meet some years ago. And here is an example, all of the same kind of steel put in a bin for future recycling. And this would be a classic type of load that we'd be baled because it's all the same kind of metal, and the recipient would not have to go sorting through it, which would be difficult to do once it's compacted. So this particular picture reminds me a little of the one that Ron sent, in that you see only the tops of the baled loads over the top of the gondola. So it's not always the easiest load to identify if you're trackside, but if you're overhead, you have a better notion of what you're dealing with. You can see in the separate baled loads here, which have been, someone has identified them in some way with orange spray paint. I'm not sure what the letters and numbers mean, but you can see one that looks like thin shavings. Others look like various component parts or stamped out sheets that remain. And then other less organized scrap in the same gondola. This is more uniform. It all looks like the same metal, and also the same altered, the same remnants from the same factory. And you can see how neatly stacked they are. Not quite as neatly stacked, a little jumble in this one. Close up. But when you look at each baled load, you see how precise the corners are. They really are tightly compacted to look very box-like. Another example taken from a bridge. And I think that's the end of my little presentation. Just a little look at baled loads for open loads.
Very
Back
nice.
in the 60s or 70s, one of the model magazines carried an article, and basically what you did is you took a sheet of aluminum foil, hung it in your paint booth, and then you used that to practice on. So you got multi-colors on that. Then you would cut it up into little squares, roll it up in a ball, and squish it square or into a bale with a pair of pliers.
Yeah,
and I've had loads like that back 30 years ago. Yeah, you're old enough to remember that article, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. Chooch also makes a casting that you can lay in a car.
Yes.
I think you have to cut it off to get it in a 52-foot car.
And if you're lazy, you buy Chooch and paint it.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Question I have is, what kind of equipment would you use to remove those bales from the gondola? Was it magnet, or if it's aluminum?
I would think some sort of well, for lack of like a pincher almost. Like you see that in the old days when people would try and get a cube of sugar out of a bowl being passed at a fancy dinner, the pincher arms would come together.
Thank you.
I've seen photos of those. They did have a lot of them were like big bobcats, let's say that type of a thing, or those small shovels you see today, and that's what they had with some of those. The two as we're calling them pincher. That's what they had on them to remove them.
Grappler.
The reason I asked is they seem so tightly packed. I couldn't see how you could get something.
Grappler's got a real pointed claw on them, and
Okay.
when they come down, they dig right through the bales. I've seen this done at the mill.
Thank you.
Yep. Hey, Ron, you mentioned poles for where you work. Were the original poles creosoted?
Yeah,
Creosote type?
you know, the telephone business rarely put in their own poles. They almost always used electric poles and paid pole contacts. But when we did, why we would buy a penta or creosote, but creosote was pretty well gone by the 70s anyway. We were into penta then.
Okay.
We bought one truckload of, we put in a large fiber optic run, and there was no power poles available. So we bought a truckload of poles, and we used them all. And of course, every once in a while, what few poles we had would break, and we would have to take and replace one.
All right. Well, very nice, Ron. Thank you. Thank you, Clark. Thank you, Dave. Very enjoyable. Anybody have anything else to share today? Well, then we will do the same thing next week. Ron, when do you think you'll be doing your trees presentation?
Well, I think Rod is ready, but I think he's been under the weather for a few days. I would say that maybe Rod would be, if he's feeling up to it, he's on there. Maybe he can tell us if he thinks he can make it next week.
Would he party too much in Chicago?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No, I think I caught it at the RPM in Naperville.
And well, I hope not, because you and I talked for quite a bit.
Yeah. Bob, thank you very much for your instructions on decaling.
Well, I hope they help you.
It did.
Good.
I'm not quite sure I'm ready for trees yet, Ron.
All right. Well, we'll see how you're feeling next week, and otherwise we'll do a potluck. Or if anybody has anything to present, let me know, and I'll put you on the schedule.
Well, you know, we're only into the C's on cars, so I'll worry with those for many years.
You got a long way to go.
I think loads are another great one, because look at that one tonight. All my years, I've never seen a coil like that in a gun on side. Never. And I'm going to ask you, Ron, to send me a photo of that one.
Okay, I'll look and see which number it is. I've started to number the photos so that we can find them easier.
Because if I put it on the railroad as a load, nobody will believe it. They'll laugh at me. So I need a photo proof that it's for real.
I see those cars every day here in Gary, and I've never seen them on their side like that either.
I'm going to keep these at 50 slides. That's long enough.
Yeah, I saw a whole train of those gondolas with the coils over the trucks 2 days ago. There must have been 50 cars loaded like that.
Oh, well, you know, the steel plant down at New Carlisle, where they coat it, you know, they bring in whole train loads every day. I don't know how many train loads they bring in a day, maybe just one.
Yeah. But, it was going east toward New Carlisle, and it was on those tracks, so it might have been headed there.
Up here at Sawyer, which is up in Michigan, they have a steel splitting plant. They bring in full-size coils of steel, and let's say they're making, I don't know, ashtray fronts in a car. You know, we used to have ashtrays. As an example, because it's narrow and small. So the reel would come out maybe only 1.5 inches wide after it's done. The full reel, but it's just 2 inches wide or whatever.
Huh.
And there would also be scrap that they would have to send back to the plant.
Yeah. So they'd cut that while it was coiled.
Yeah. They split them, they call them splitting.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I got.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. We'll see you next week, and have a great Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for the invite, Greg.
Well, you bet.